Hi, everyone. Although we're not supposed to greet everyone with a hello today on Tish'a BeAb, wanted to thank you for coming. And my topic today, what I really wanted to talk about, really relates. Okay, gotcha. Really relates to the second part of Tish'a BeAb, where you're able really to speak divrei nechama. And I wanted to actually share with the group here. Um, Last night, I was looking for a way to connect my children to the events of Tish'a B'Av, and I found this video. So I'm going to post the link to the video here. It's from an institute in Israel, and they, I think, did a phenomenal job in really describing the battle for Yerushalayim from the Second Temple period. And as we were watching this video of the Roman battle with the Jews and the surrounding of Yerushalayim and the battle back and forth and the give and take, my son said to me, "This video is very sad." And I said, "Yes, it is." And then he said it to me again. "This video is very sad." And it struck a chord with me because we had just also watched a video testimony of an American soldier who had saved about 200 American POWs before. And there was some footage there, but look, it was a good story with a good ending. But that didn't impact him in that it was so sad. And this morning, when he got up, he said to me again, "That video last night was very sad." And I asked him, "What about it was very sad?" So he said that the tone of the person who was speaking was sad, but also the way the events were portrayed were very sad. And it was hard for him to watch it because it was so sad. And it struck me that in reality, it is very hard for us to deal with a day like Tish'a B'Av. It is an incredibly sad day. It's a day that, Hashem decreed upon us, b'chiyah l'dorot, that there would be generations that would cry, and we cried l'chinam, and Hashem would give us a reason to cry. And the lists of all the different things that happened on Tish'a B'Av. But there is one thing that happened on Tish'a B'Av that in the midst of this is very sad, was a glimmer of hope. And that is that it says in Masechet Sanhedrin on 98, page 98, Daf Bet, Amud Bet, sorry, that the Mashiach was born, the Menachem was born on Tish'a B'Av. And we know in various places in Jewish liturgy that it says that Hashem is always makdim refu'ah l'makah. He always sends what's going to be the healing part of a makkah before it actually comes. That he never leaves us for the "it's sad." He always takes us to the other piece where then there is a Yeshua that's coming and there is a hopefulness that's coming. And I wanted to take today for a little bit today to really investigate a little piece of that hopeful part. And we know that Mashiach is Mashiach ben David. That Mashiach is coming from the house of David, and that David is called in Tanakh by Hashem Avdi, that David is the Eved of Hashem. But I was recently rereading Shemuel Bet with my daughter, and David had it difficult. He starts off, he's chosen by Hashem. His father didn't even want to bring him to Shemuel as one of the people who would get chosen. Then he goes and he sits at Shaul's table, and Shaul tries to kill him, and he has to spend years in hiding. And then even when David is king, he meets with a lot of adversity. So I wanted to investigate with you, if you will, one time period in David's life that seems to be a really very difficult time period. What are the characteristics that David shows that I think in the end really speaks to us about what a Mashiach can bring to us, what a Geulah could bring to us, what redemption can come from, and whether or not that redemption has to be perfect from the beginning. So I'm going to share my screen with you, if you will. And we're going to look at this together. So we're really going to take a look here at Mered Avshalom. When Avshalom, so just to give a little bit of background, there was an incident that happened between David's children. Amnon had taken advantage of his half-sister Tamar, and there's discussion in the Mefarshim whether or not she was really his half-sister or not. And David heard about it, he was angry about it, but he didn't, from what we know, punish Amnon, and Avshalom was angry. So at some point, Avshalom kills Amnon, and David was angry about that as well. And then Avshalom runs away to Geshur, which is a place where David had been as well. And he stays there for a couple of years. When he comes back, David brings him back at the behest of Yoav ben Tzruya, his commander-in-chief. But David doesn't really talk to Avshalom during that whole time period. And at some point, Avshalom wrests the Melucha from David. And he goes down to Hebron to do it, exactly the path of David that he first started in Hebron, and he rebels against his father, and he gets the nation to rebel against his father. So we're going to take a look, and not at the entire perek that discusses the rebellion, but at a few very particular pieces that struck me. And this is, we only have until 3:25, so this is going to be a short take a look at the characteristics that I believe David really embodies, and that is the reason that one of the very many reasons why the Mashiach comes from him. Okay, so if we take a look at this first piece, it's not that they rebelled against David and nobody was with David. There were very many people who were with David, among them Tzadok HaKohen. And Tzadok is going to bring the Aron Berit Hashem with David, because, David is Mashiach Hashem. Avshalom was not in any way, shape, or form anointed. The kingship was not torn from David by any heavenly decree. And that Tzadok is going to follow David out of Yerushalayim. And then David turns to Tzadok, and this is what he says to him. Vayomer HaMelech leTzadok, Hashev et Aron Elokim Ha'ir. Leave Aron Berit Hashem in Yerushalayim. Im emsachen be'enei Hashem v'heshivani, v'hir'ani oto ve'et naveo. And if Hashem desires it, if this is going to go in my way, then Hashem will bring me back and to the place where the Aron is, and not that the Aron should follow me. And this is what he's saying, and if Hashem decides that he doesn't want me, whatever Hashem decides for me, that's what he's going to do. It's going to be the right thing, and I am not obligated to, I'm not taking the Aron with me. And he tells him to keep his sons in Yerushalayim with him. So for me, the read on these psukim show me a couple of things. Number one, there's many people who would want the Aron Berit Hashem with them, quite obviously. The power of it, Aron Berit Hashem used to go to war with Bnei Israel, and it was a rallying point, and it was a point of bitachon. So I see here in David two characteristics which I think are crucial. The first being this bitachon, but a bitachon not necessarily that everything is going to be okay, but a bitachon that Hashem is going to do the right thing, and that he himself is going to do the best to do it on Hashem. But whatever Hashem decides, David is willing to accept whatever decision God makes, and Aron Berit Hashem is not subject to what happens to David or doesn't happen to David. So there's that sense of bitachon and a sense of humility that Aron Berit Hashem should stay in Yerushalayim. Okay, so that's the one. Then further along the way, David is leaving. He's going to hide out, so to speak, to see what's going to happen with Avshalom, if Avshalom is really going to pursue him to kill him. And along the way, a man by the name of Shim'i ben Gera meets David and the men who are leaving with him. and he's from Shevet Binyamin, and he comes out and he's ecstatic about the day. And he's throwing stones at David and his men, and he's cursing David and his men, and he's calling David a murderer and saying all these terrible things about David. And, David is on his way out. He's not the favored son anymore, so to speak. And Avishai ben Tzeruya, who's not the commander-in-chief, but his brother, says to the king, Lama yikalel hakelev hamet hazeh. Why should this dead dog curse you at Adoni HaMelech, the king, my master, the king? Why should this guy feel that he has the right to curse the king? Let me go, and I'm going to take off his head right now. That's what Avishai wants. That's what he thinks is called for. It's really, I don't even think any of us could imagine, even with all the current political circumstances, people throwing stones. I mean, maybe we can imagine, actually. I take that back with the current political climate. But at any rate, such a thing did not happen in the kingdom of David. And David's answer I find to be very compelling. Vayomer HaMelech, ma li v'lachem b'nei Tzeruya. And that phrase is going to come up again. What is it between you and me, b'nei Tzeruya? Why do you think this guy is coming at me and cursing me? Because Hashem told him to curse me. And who says that to tell him, why did you do that? Vayomer David el Avishai ve'el kol avodav. He tells all his servants, Hinei beni asher yatsa me'ai mevakeshet nafshi. My son, who I am his father, I contributed to his being in this world, wants to kill me. Okay, so this guy, Shevet Binyamin, he comes out to curse me, so leave him. He's not the one who's trying to kill me. My own son is trying to kill me. Yikalel, and let him curse me, ki amar lo Hashem, because everything comes from Hashem. Ulai yir'eh Hashem be'eni, ve'heshiv Hashem li tova tachat kilulato hayom hazeh. And okay, let him keep doing it, because maybe this will also be part of my punishment. Hashem will consider this part of my punishment, and Hashem will reward me for not having taken revenge on him. So what do I see here? So there's something else that I'm going to come back to, but from right now, from right here, David is someone who can be really laser focused. He has perspective, and he keeps his perspective no matter what's going on around him. He is leaving Yerushalayim because his son is rebelling against him. And that is, number one, underline it, bold, italicized, David's problem. That this guy came out because he sees that David is down, that's a distraction. And for the Mashiach, for the leader of a people, for the person who's going to bring redemption to Bnei Israel, we cannot allow ourselves to be swayed from what the main issue is. And many times I think, and I think it's also human nature, that we tend to get distracted. Sometimes we're distracted because this is something that I can take care of. I can cut off Shimei ben Gera's head right now very easily, that's taken care of. But the real issue is that Absalom is trying to kill his father. And that David doesn't, he's not going to allow himself to be pulled on the side by the other things. So that's here with Shimei ben Gera, and we'll come back to the conversation that he has with Abishai. David gets to his encampment where he's going to be, and there's going to be a fight, battle between his forces and the forces of Avshalom. And here I think people have, it's interesting. So you would think, Avshalom is Mored b'Malchut. He killed Amnon. David hadn't spoken to him for years up to a certain point. The king calls the three people who are in charge of the different divisions of his army, and he says to them, Le'at li lana'ar le'Avshalom. So it's interesting language. Deal gently with my son Avshalom, with the boy Avshalom. V'chol ha'am sham'u b'tzavot hamelech et kol hasarim. And the whole nation heard that really David asked that they deal gently with Avshalom. So really, what's that? You know, I thought David's laser focused on the fact that there's a rebellion against him and that his son means to kill him. So I saw a very nice thing from the Rabbi, and the truth is that the Lashon of Le'at comes up again once David finds out that Avshalom was killed. But the Ralbag says that David was really open to the possibility that maybe even Avshalom could change. That the situation as it is in the middle of a rebellion is not the be-all, end-all. It doesn't mean that someone is your enemy for forever, but there is a possibility, maybe there's a possibility if we give him the chance, that Avshalom doesn't really mean to kill David, or something had taken over Avshalom, and that in the reality, to give him an opportunity for Avshalom to return, for Avshalom to make teshuvah. Now, we all know in the end it doesn't happen, that Avshalom's hair gets stuck in a tree, and here's the story right here. And one of the soldiers comes to Yoav and says to Yoav that Avshalom is stuck in the tree. So Yoav says to his soldier, so why didn't you kill him? And the soldier says to Yoav, me? I'm not killing him, no matter how much anybody would give me. Lo eshlach yadi el ben hamelech. I'm not going to kill the son of the king. We all heard the king tell you and Avishai and Ittai that said, don't try not to hurt my son. So Yoav says, oh, is that the case? So you don't want to be over at Davel Melech? No problem. I'm not going to wait for you. He goes. He stabs Avshalom through with 3 spears, and Avshalom still didn't die. And then 10 of Yoav's immediate soldiers proceed to hit Avshalom, to wound Avshalom until he dies. So of course he comes back to David, and I don't have the Pesukim here, but he sends messengers to David to tell David what happened, and David is devastated. He's devastated that Avshalom was killed, and he cries over him until the point where Yoav comes to him and says, listen, he was in a rebellion against you. All the other people stopped the rebellion, but the people who were fighting for you are seeing you crying for your enemy. It's not, you're not going to inspire confidence in the people. So David collects himself, and he once again goes to the people to lead the people, to thank them for their service. And now he's on the way back to Yerushalayim. And on the way back to Yerushalayim, we see this again. Shim'i ben Gera comes back. And this time he comes with Ish Yehuda, and he comes from Shevet Binyamin, and he comes with Tziva, who was Mephibosheth's servant from Beit Shaul, and he comes with all his children, and he runs to be the first to apologize really to the king. And when Avishai sees this, Avishai says to David, Hatachat zot lo yumat, so that's it, he cursed you, he threw rocks at you, and now because he's the first one back, you're not going to kill him. Hatachat zot lo yumat Shim'i ki kilel Mashiach Hashem. And David answers him again, Ma li v'lachem b'nei Tzuriya ki teyu li hayom l'satan, that you're going to cause trouble for me today. Hayom yumat ish b'Yisrael ki alo yadati hayom ani melech al Yisrael. He said, why should I put someone to death on a day where I'm being returned as king of Israel? It won't, you could think of it as a few ways. It won't go well for me, right? I'm coming back, right? It's a question of, now that there was this war, now that there was this battle, what is my response to the people who I was designed to lead? And I think here we see a midah of David again, of graciousness, of a willingness to accept a change of heart, at least for the time being. So I saw this beautiful thing really, and it came to me from the sentence that David said twice, Ma li v'lachem b'nei Tzruya, because throughout Shemuel Bet, the truth is that Yoav had consistently, quite often, rebuked David, as he did when he was crying over Avshalom, as he tried to convince David at a later point not to count the people. So here we are. Yigal Ariel wrote this, and he says, what did David really give us? And this is really, I think, the approach of the redemption, the approach of Geula. David Hekim Ola Shel Teshuvah. Of all the leaders that we've had, David embodies and exemplifies throughout his life this ability to do teshuvah. So darko she'apcha לעתים להיות על קלקלה, חשוכה ומעורפלת, יוצאת לבסוף אל המרחב. That David oftentimes embarks on a road that's murky, that's foggy, that's dark, and what happens in the end? בכל המחשכים מפציע לבסוף אור התשובה. But in the end, it comes out to a breath of place, a place of teshuvah. And Yoav and Avishai, eino salchan, they're not necessarily forgivers. Lo legabe atzmo, not for themselves, lo legabe acherim, and not for others either. En hu motzei derech tikun. Yoav couldn't see a way for Avshalom or Shimei ben Gera to be able to do teshuvah. Gishto pashtanit. He's simple. Umugbelet. What's happening today? What did the person do? And whatever the person does, that's what they carry on their back. That's their burden. That makes them who they are. In the end, David tells Shlomo to kill Yoav. And where does Yoav go? To the Mizbeach Hashem. Ve'ochaz bekarnei Mizbeach. Right? So it says here in Makot Yudbet that Yoav made a mistake, that he held on to the horns of the Mizbeach. Really, the only way to get redemption is to hold on to the roof. The horns of the Mizbeach, mitpaltzot yotzot litzdadim. They come out from the sides, they're out, they're not facing each other, they're high up. What's the gag? What's the roof of the Mizbeach? Kolet rak gago shel Mizbeach. You get redemption from the roof of the Mizbeach, hame'ached et hatzdadim, the piece of the Mizbeach that brings all the different sides together. And that was what Yoav was not necessarily so able to do. So if I could bring it together a little bit, David and his ability to be the progenitor of the Mashiach because of his humility, because of his bitachon, because of his ability to see things from multiple perspectives, yet not be distracted by what seems easiest to fix, and by his ability to allow other people the opportunity for change, David is what can allow us to view a redemption. And if I can say, I know it's a funny thing to kind of say this, but I think this is also obvious in two of the times where the Navi is sent to David to say to David, you sinned and you're going to be punished. And that is that David says in two cases, right? He comes with the Maaseh of Bathsheba, and I have 2 minutes, so I'm going to do this quick. And he says, and Natan tells him the story, and David says the punishment before Natan tells him that he's the person. And then once again with David, when he counts the people, Hashem comes to him and he knows he's choosing his punishment. Hashem tells him, you get one of three. It could be war, it could be famine, or it could be a magefa. He doesn't choose the war or the famine because he believes that could allow Bnei Israel to fall into other people's hands and be subservient to other people. He chooses Magefa because he says a very famous sentence that we say every time in Tahanunim, Nipilana biyad Hashem kirabim rahamav, ubiyad Adam al epola, that we should always put ourselves upon the mercy of Hashem, because his mercies are great, and I should never have to rely on the mercy of people. And the Rabbi adds to this as well, that in a war or a famine, David had the upper hand over the people. And David chose the one punishment where he would be equal in the eyes of Hashem for the punishment, that he should have no greater advantage over the Jewish people. And I think that those are the qualities, Ezra Hashem, that the Mashiach should come and the redemption should come, and we should all be able to see our way clear without distractions, with humility, with grace, with a constancy of purpose for Avodat Hashem. And may we be able to celebrate Tish'a BeAb in Yerushalayim next year.